Welcome to Insight Marketing Success, the podcast where marketing knowledge meets real-world experience, from vision to execution.
Alex, welcome to Inside Marketing Success. I'm very happy to have you here because I think our audience will get a kick of all the experience that you have with everything you have done in your career. So why don't we start by introducing yourself, who you are, and the professional roles you have had during your career.
Ricardo, thanks for having me on, and it's good to be here and discuss this topic. Traditionally, I've been a clinical researcher for a little over a decade. I studied biochemistry and economics at UNC Chapel Hill. Later transitioned from research operations and outsourcing to venture capital itself. And today I run a venture studio.
Awesome. So today, what would you say is your title?
I'm the managing partner at InnoSwift Venture Studios.
Awesome. So in your career and everything you have done, what would you say has been a home run, on a marketing endeavor that you have taken where you were like, my God, we thought it was going to be good, but it actually was better than expected?
Two situations, and one inspired the other. Earlier in my research career, wasn't making that great of money or anything. So I had some side hustles 10, 15 years ago, and it included sales, drop shipping. Now, I'm not going to go really into that topic per se, but this was before I feel drop shipping was really widespread. And, I got into cosmetics and accessories and choosing the right cosmetics to solve the right problem kind of thing was my perspective in choosing product. And some of those products really, really blew up. Fast forwarding 10 years later, when I founded my first research service company, I hired and outsourced all sorts of people for commercial, but eventually it falls back on the CEO. So I recalled, what about when I was doing the drop shipping made it just work on its own? What turned its own wheel? And it was the fact that you were actually solving a need that was a, I guess, burning issue for the customer. So instead of thinking what services I could provide, pitching them, oh, look, we have good talent or this or that, I actually reframed the whole model. There's so many drugs and technologies out there that are being developed, and they're being pitched every day by agencies, all sorts of companies. And to differentiate from them, I started InnoSwift. And now I get incoming leads. I don't really market outbound. The brand reputation stays strong. By putting some skin in the game for the customer, making them feel that way, reassuring them something they already know about their product, and it's a solid product and it's just being overlooked, helped make it all come alive. So in the beginning, struggling to market, doing this service, this lead gen, this outreach. But in the end, I reframed everything into how can I build a brand that solves the hair on fire issues?
Awesome. When you started with cosmetics, the convenience of shipping made it go, right? It created inertia, that convenience. And now that you have InnoSwift, you said you're putting skin in the game. So you're actually putting effort yourself and partnering with the company to have a mutually beneficial gain when things go well.
That's correct. And the reason why in both these situations I found similarity was that what made the drop shipping itself go, right? What about my current model makes customers want to inquire about it? And by reframing that customer market mindset, I was able to tap into business that comes inbound rather than having to sell outbound.
Amazing. All right. So obviously your marketing approach has changed because of that. And now that we have digital marketing and AI coming into this, how are you using or taking advantage of these trends?
I'd agree both of us probably have great ideas that pop up every day, and it helps accelerate that research. You could use automation to, mass email people or craft the perfect email. but without the actual ingenuity on top of it, you can't really accelerate or go further. So there's so many tools and whatever out there to refine your pitch or whatever. But I actually started focusing more on my relationships. And then when I work on my relationships, I'm able to deploy AI more effectively. In a world where everything's automated, having genuine relationships with people is how you have gained an edge, right? So to use AI properly, I use it to analyze a topic. Um, Maybe you're in a certain foreign country that doesn't have pressure washing as a service and it's highly needed. Use it to conduct your feasibility analysis. Use it to conduct, how much do people spend? Use it to conduct who are the top agencies and competitors and so on and so forth. So rather than, craft an amazing pitch for me to blast people, I'm using it to really understand my customers in to some granular level, almost as well as they do, or if not better. That way, when you actually have those conversations to build the relationships, you come off as knowledgeable, you come off as you've done your homework. And if anything, you're revealing insights to the customer that they didn't necessarily have to begin with because they're focused on their job day to day. So I guess AI is, again, very, very powerful, but to me, it's been most effective when I used it this way.
I like it very much. You said something during that conversation. You said, in order to build genuine relationships, right? And I cannot agree more with you. Building really strong relationships with people, when they understand your values, when they understand you, and you can be as competent using the research, will go a long way. I know my long-term relationships have gone because of that. Trying to help them and build that genuine, mutually beneficial relationship. That was examples that you had where you had the drop ship. Was that the best marketing campaign that you did ever?
Probably not. When I founded Research and Development Concierge Company 7 years ago, I about a year or two into it, started leaning off commercial and started thinking, I need to think about marketing campaigns. I need to think about what my customers are feeling. Now, for the audience and for yourself, a lot of clinical development, which is the development of new drugs, not just in the lab, but what are the side effects? Does it work? What's the right dose? It's a black box even to the medical community. A lot of them know the steps, but there's just so many moving parts that you really have to engross yourself in the industry to understand. So marketing for me really meant focusing on that very, very, very specialized niche and making very personalized, like every month, every quarter, depending on the stock market, depending on how competitor products are developing, I'd alter my marketing. So it would be, again, more all about, more focus on relationship building, but I was kind of automating that outreach 6, 7 years ago, right? Not using automated LI tools from the past 3, 4 years. If anything, um, even though those tools have been democratized, if you don't have an edge with your tool or your process, you're not going to sincerely close a high volume of customers or the right customers. So I would say the most successful marketing campaign was when I started focusing on those niches and subsets. And instead of sending 3,000 messages to 20,000 people I know, I sent only three. And the ROI conversion from that ended up being 1 or 2 out of 3 every time I would make these micro campaigns. So I would say just you have to really know your audience. If I wasn't working in a very R&D confidential like environment where there's not too many customers per se, I would use a completely different strategy, right? Um, yeah, I would say that was the most compelling. The first year, between the first year and the third year, and in year two is when I really pushed marketing, we grew almost 200%. And I use zero advertisements with that. I really believe in the power of understanding that relationship building, that genuine rapport, but using marketing campaigns that are specific to your industry segment or audience. There's only so many skyscraper architects, for example. If you're trying to market to them, I wouldn't market to them like I'm selling a supplement.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. So, how do you balance the brand building efforts with the need to have short term results when you are having a new brand or a new endeavor?
That's been an interesting journey, and I'm sure you can comment on this as well. Um, from our conversations together, your firm's been around for 2 decades or more,
Yeah.
and you've evolved and refined your services and niches, not because something um, is not working for you or you're not necessarily making money, but you're finding a more uh, innovative solution, or you're problem solving a more specific niche. I mean, many people provide the same services. So in terms of brand and short-term gains, for me, you know, the first way I was approaching it was I got to come up with the coolest name, the coolest logo, right? You think
Yeah.
if I can come up with an undeniable brand, then people will come. Well, I think that works more for fashion maybe than a lot of companies. I'm not going to say that amazing brand names and logos don't work in other sectors, but brand reputation, I think, right, is a slow process, but it needs to come first. If you're going to build an independent brand or whatever, you need to build a reputation for you, Ricardo, in your firm. And no matter what you're really selling, that will follow with that reputation, that clout, that network. So while I was in the service industry specifically and outsourcing, I took the old approach. Here's a brand. Here's how we're different from other brands that I used to work for or our competitors. And here's what we're offering you today. And here's the best price. But today, I focus more on the mission. I focus more on building brand recognition, using my career progression as a tool, a marketing tool itself. Hey, for me, it evolved from there's a lot of companies out there that have drugs and technologies they need to develop. They don't have agile enough teams or the budget's too high. But now it's like, oh, this is actually going to help people. This is some solid science. Or I know customers that will buy from this, or I can sell this company off. By focusing on the brand and what I'm trying to do with the mission, I've been able to create an influx of potential customers and inquiries. I'm getting, I mean, I was spending 5, 6 figures on marketing and commercial years ago. I spend very little now on that specific activity, and I'm getting inbound leads. It's amazing. It's like when you start working out and you need to lose some weight. You look in the mirror after a week, there's progress, you feel better, but you don't see it. So branding is kind of like that. And once you get to the point where I like my body and whatever, then you might build that self-confidence and whatever. I think building a brand's like that. I wouldn't, if I'm a single man, I hate this analogy, and you're trying to start dating, right? I wouldn't try to date before you are representing the version of yourself you want to be. And I would say that mirrors into business. Don't go around pitching things, solving problems, talking about your brand or who you're affiliated with until you're actually uh, able to do so. And that I think that's really the differentiating point. A lot of successful entrepreneurs, people that own their own firms, they subconsciously do this.
Yeah, agree. I couldn't agree more with you. And in our case, as you said, we started in '98. We have adapted. We started as a web design company, and marketing has evolved so much. We had to become a branding company, and today we're a digital marketing agency and have this podcast. So it's adapting to the market and to the needs and who I want to be, because let's face it, making money is not really what drives me. It is feeling good about doing good work, and the money comes second. So that's great. All right. Um, how does customer feedback and data play a role for you?
I don't think there's a one-way process for this. Um, you know, in I would say that the approach you would use in healthcare and clinical development is similar but very different than making a product or a service. I could invent a new drug, but if there's no one with that disease, what's the point? You know?
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, in any industry, the data should start with solid science. Should I open a marketing agency in X state and offer these services? Study the science of the economics of that area. Study um, how businesses are performing. Why aren't they already adopting these things? So I really believe in looking at the data this way, and it's never too early to talk to customers, especially if you're trying to build relationships. Oh, I have an idea for a product that can solve this problem. No, 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 leave that off the table. I'm saying, Ricardo, what is your biggest challenge in leveraging AI to make your agency more effective or have a more competitive edge? And how can we do that without broadcasting AI, AI, AI? So I think having early conversations with customers, being inquisitive, even if that's not your specialty or industry, will allow you to ultimately make a more intellectual argument for your customers. So if you're prototyping, developing a product, right now I'm developing a software for facial injections. Right now, when people do facial injections, whether aesthetics or because they have, muscular imbalances in their face, there's not a real personalized documentation system. It's just a picture of a face and a hit X. We injected this today, signed Dr. Who. And, I thought of this idea, and then I went to talk to plastic surgeons directly and people who work in this space. Um, by learning their aptitude for it, encouraged me to start prototyping. So early conversations make a difference. I would say in today's market altogether, when I mean the market in terms of launching a startup, should I get venture capital? Should I get a loan? Should I bootstrap? All of them would like to see a wait list. If you go to the bank and say I have 100 customers waiting, or I go to a famous venture capitalist and say I got a wait list of 10 enterprise customers, um, that really makes a difference. So that early conversation, that relationship, leveraging customer conversations and your early data analysis. Remember earlier we were talking about leveraging AI, feasibility, knowing what you're talking about, makes a big difference. Not surface level keywords will work anymore. It's necessary, regardless of your path to success now, to do that early customer data analysis. And I personally will not pick up a company into the venture studio unless they have that kind of traction or awareness. What's the point of building the coolest rocket ship if no one wants to buy it?
Nice point. Awesome. So, how do you embed a story brand into your communication? Storytelling. I'm sorry. And obviously, you're a really good communicator.
I appreciate that. Back to the relationships thing. Um, Look, there's some incredible salespeople and marketers who can trigger a person to get into the right mindset. They develop a presence, they tap into the moment. Sell me this pen becomes, okay, I want the pen for these reasons. I'm not particularly good at psychologically engineering. So when it comes to story building, if we were to start talking about space or elephants and tell you something interesting you didn't know about it, um, it's about drawing your attention into the subject matter. So if we're trying to sell my venture studio, which I don't really sell, storytelling comes about how I got here, why I'm here, and why do I think it's important to do what I'm doing. This works for almost any product or service. Why is Ricardo in Minnesota? Why is he adapting his agency the way it is? And that's the story itself. I mean, sometimes telling your actual challenges, what you think things are ultimately good for, um, And sharing that just vulnerability in that storytelling makes a big difference. You could use storytelling um, to market a product's capability or application. But I wouldn't say that's the same kind of storytelling. For example, I'm working on the commercial side for one of the companies. It's called Cypress Medical. It's a device for making stitches very deep using very narrow holes, not quite endoscopic. Um, there's many applications, right? Oh, where can I make a tiny incision and throw a suture? But in reality, not all of them improve the bottom line for the customer. So out of all of the many applications we thought of, doing neck lifts for customers who don't want to do like a very invasive facelift surgery ended up being the most marketable use case. So
Okay.
customers hear about the device, blah, 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 blah. But I tell them this exact story. You know, it works in this, it works in this, it works in this. But there's nothing that impressed me more than reducing the time of a facelift from 3 to 5 hours to 30 minutes. Right. So I think there's that kind of storytelling. And then there's the other storytelling of on the business level, on a personal level, your personal journey. Knowing when to use either is important. Some customers don't really care about how Alex got here and why he's with the company. And some people really want to know that piece in order to partner together.
Well, I think by using it there in your personal story, you bring a lot of authenticity, you know, and it goes back into that when you talked about the relationship that you're able to build with the person, you know. So and so um, I strongly agree. I'm with you about the relationships and building that authenticity and bring those relationships, make it stronger instead of just surface, you know, whatever. All
I
right.
agree.
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. What metrics matter the most when you are evaluating a marketing initiative?
I keep it simple. I don't look at total, like for example, who is your total addressable market? Um, and I think people tend to like inflate that number because it gets them excited. Wow, I could be working with all of these people. How many people put gas in their car? But are you realistically going to put a gas station everywhere with your own brand? No. So I think thinking about your immediate total addressable market and calculating that number and constantly refining that number based on your campaigns and your efforts, that's a key one. The second one, obviously, is turn and attrition. How many customers stay? How many customers leave? Why do they leave? Um, People think that startup X is not big yet because they don't have a lot of customers or not. But if you look at really successful companies like even OpenAI, they had maybe like 100 or 1,000 customers who were super obsessed with them. And by having that recurring community base, an actual fan base, they were able to grow from there. So how many of your customers are sticking around and why? Um, the third piece is like, I guess, really average ticket price and the average cost or expense it takes to fulfill that. If certain services are working, but they're just not really that profitable, how can I make them more profitable without decreasing the value of the service? There are many, 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 many more metrics, right? How many people click to buy and so on and so forth. Um, but again, when you're looking at high ticket items, selling equity, or I guess very niche products, um, to really get traction with the initial marketing, you need to focus on who can I address immediately? Is my efforts profitable? I think we're long as the day where, oh, let's just put more money into marketing, we get this return out of it. I think that works as a strategy when you have traction already. I think that works some of the time, But if that's your primary growth driver, that's not quite sustainable in my opinion. I don't buy Coca-Cola whenever I see an ad, but sometimes I do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But then you have to first start with what's Coca-Cola, right? With markets that you haven't been there. So, all right. How do you foster creativity in your marketing or in your sales departments?
We all like that word, right? We all like hearing, oh, they're creative or this or that, but there's a balance with creativity and order and process. There's a balance between creativity and trust. Some people who are incredibly creative or amazing artists may not appear the most stable in some ways, right? So when you're trying to sell or market, you want to give them that assurance, reassurance. Creativity in sales and marketing can either evoke an emotion of, wow, that really resonates with me, or that they said that so perfectly. A lot of times I'm looking at websites and I see a lot of creativity, but I don't really understand what the product is, especially SaaS companies. It's just like, what do you mean this is innovative for fintech? What are you doing for fintech, right? Um, the other side of creativity could be just out of box thinking, right?
Mhm.
Or being resilient with a customer. So I would separate those qualities when someone says, "Oh, he's a creative person." Why? Because he can think outside of the box and deal with any situation. Well, those are different attributes. Creativity is your ability to create novel scenarios, situations, solutions. Um, a lot of times it's reflective of artistic abilities. Creativity can be used to make your work more efficient.
Yep.
So I love working with partners who not necessarily think outside of the box, but find creative ways to achieve what they need to, whether it's more cost effectiveness, whether it's to complete an activity more quickly, um, and ultimately demonstrating creativity without deliberately demonstrating it. Oh, let me show them how creative I am, is a sign of intelligence, and people like intelligent people. Someone
Yep.
going to make the effort to do something creative for you as an exercise itself is rapport building. So when you're looking at actual sales interface, it shows you're trying to go the extra mile because you're doing it for the person, you're doing it for the team. It's not about making money, like you said. That follows. So creativity is a multifaceted quality. It can be used to establish reassurance. It could be used to demonstrate intellectual capabilities. But ultimately, it's if you're really good at it, you're evoking the desired thoughts and emotions from your customer or partner or whoever, such that they understand your message, such that they understand who you are, what your service or product is. What do you think? How do you think people use creativity effectively yourself? What are some
Well,
effective ways?
yeah, it has to be a balance. It has to be a balance of that creative, and as you were talking, it has to be something creative that is makes the prospect or the customer think, you know, and do an action. So that's the type of creative thinking that I like, where really causes a pause on that prospective customer or the current customer, and says, okay, well, what does that mean to me, you know, and create that emotion to execute something, you know.
It's a
That's
very
what,
personal thing, right?
yeah, in either interaction or signing up for something or whatever that is. But those are the ones that I give the most value to, you know. And like you said, you can have a very creative person, but you have to have another person who's looking at the balance of that creativity with what is the outcome of that, you know. And so, um, yeah. So
Something that reminds me of, just to really highlight this, I used to draw and paint a lot as a child, and as I grew up, I really appreciated going to art museums, traveling for those reasons. After a while, I started to realize it's not the fact that they produce something that detailed or amazing or unique. It's the fact that they can evoke that personal reaction from all sorts of different types of people, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of art that a famous artist could have made, but there's certain pieces that multiple people consistently feel an evoked emotion from. That's ingenious to me,
Yeah.
right? That's where you're at peak creativity. How can I demonstrate something artistic or evoke a message that not just you will understand, but many people will understand?
Mhm.
That's the challenge with creativity and honing in on your creativity.
Agreed. Agreed. What advice would you give to a company who's struggling to differentiate themselves in the marketplace? Is struggling with their brand. Um,
Would you say, for this example, you'd like to use a mature company trying to
sure,
pivot or a
sure.
startup? I don't know.
Let's use a mature company who had traction but became stagnant.
It may or may not be a branding problem. Um, the only time it really becomes a branding problem is if there was a bad project with a notable customer. Um, oh, don't use that company, XYZ. Yeah, that would trigger a rebrand to me. But I wouldn't be discouraged from, a customer or many customers' bad feedback from continuing your brand. A lot of times I had to learn the hard way. Many people learn the hard way. I was discouraged many, many times when certain brands of mine became 5 years or older. Should I continue with this brand? Should I continue doing what I'm doing? And I think there's some misplaced satiation. Am I satiated and happy? When I started this business, I wanted to achieve a feeling of whatever it was, a dollar amount in the bank, customer success, or be part of the marketplace in a certain way. And whether you're starting a pet store or you're a celebrity, once you hit every milestone, it's never enough. So, yes, I mean, a lot of brands don't do well in the long run because they don't adapt, right? Adapting can be really hard for some people.
Yeah.
Take healthcare. People don't jump on softwares or new technology, even when they're objectively better and they're not deploying AI. I mean, even before this type of automation, it was very hard to do that. And at the same time, many private healthcare practices, hospital systems, um, they're having all sorts of financial issues. So there is some brands are just going to die just because of resistance to change.
To adapt to the days. Yeah. To adapt to the modern and the new day. Yeah. People change. Customers change.
Everything's always changing, whether you like it or not. And you got to go with those ebbs and flows. Um, Sometimes I like to evaluate brands when there's a merger or acquisition or maybe a new service. 9 times out of 10, in my opinion, if you have some years of success behind you with that brand, the brand itself is not holding you back. It's your profitability, your management structure. Um, 2, 3 years ago, when we saw this, um, I guess, non-technical AI boom, with this software, you can build an app. With this software, you can do this and that. While I was working with one model, the next week there was more technologies to reevaluate the job descriptions. How do I run this? So I almost sat back and waited to see what technologies would come out and stabilize, what services would come out and stabilize, and then procure them. Um, if your brand is not growing and you're a mature brand, The reality is you likely need to procure new technologies or you know what I mean, like a new technology or a new way to become
Yeah, yeah,
profitable with your existing services, or you may be tapped out in your market. I mean, there's only so many high net worth individuals in a small town in the middle of nowhere if you're trying to offer private wealth management.
yeah. Understand.
So I think you might really just tap out of your market sometimes. A lot of times I see brands that have years of history behind them, if they're not doing well or they're not going to the next level, they're just not deploying basic, business discipline, basic fundamentals, right? I've came into restaurants, I've come into consulting firms, advising firms, and they're successful. But it's just like, what? You're not doing this basic thing? It's bizarre to me. There's some things in business that are like you have to drink water every day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They don't deploy it. So I would say don't especially for students watching or marketing professionals, don't overlook the basics of a business, profitability, operations, cost productivity. Those really make a difference.
Yeah.
Um,
Specifically the survival of the company for a long term. So absolutely. All right. So here goes a question that I like to ask my guests.
sure.
You now today have a lot of experience, a lot of success, and some failures, or learning experiences, however you want to categorize them. Um, but if you could go back in time and talk to Alex starting in its new career, what advice would you give yourself, having the knowledge that you have today, to the Alex coming out of college and starting the new job?
Probably two things. Um, a lot of people talk about this, so I won't cover too much of it, but a lot of times you can feel like an imposter. But because you haven't done something before. You may know something, you might have worked in a service or an industry, but that imposter syndrome really, I guess, affected my self-confidence earlier in my career. And throughout, you hit different milestones. I've seen many people struggle with that, but that's just the nature of like your own consciousness trying to humble you in your social interactions. When it comes to business and growth, it's about the merit of your ideas. If you conducted proper feasibility, if tomorrow I, come up with this new cotton candy machine, I'm not a cotton candy expert, but I know the merits of the use case. I did my analysis on how many people buy cotton candy and so forth. The next one, I encounter this a lot with other founders.
Yeah.
Hire slow, fire fast.
Okay.
Heard this before.
Yeah.
So many times I'm loyal to people, maybe more than they're loyal to me. Maybe a lot of people feel that way. And especially when you're really, really passionate about your brand or your company, or, oh my goodness, we're working with Apple, right? Some big vendor. I'm sorry, work for some big customer. Um, you don't want disruption with the customer, but that's the nature of business. You don't want to ruin someone's life, but how many times have your own life, been ruined by a customer or a previous employer? So business is just business, and it's not unethical to fire quickly. Now, in both of these situations, this means making very clear, strict criteria that your employees or customers know about. I mean, there's such thing as bad customers as well. It's not just firing employees, firing bad customers. No, I'm not going to tolerate this. And I put up with a lot from different people. I mean, I'm not unique to this, right? I mean, a lot of people put up with a lot. But if I could go back in time and save some headaches and keep some money in the bank, those are probably my two things. Hey, you're not an imposter, you're ambitious and you want to solve an idea, and you're loyal to your mission, Other people who understand and believe this mission will be on board with you. If they're not on board or they cause damage or reputational harm to the company, respect the time and effort you put into your company and your brand. Honor it. There will be other people that honor it. Yeah, but at the same time, these are learning lessons. You have to
Awesome.
fail many, many times. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner who passed away, didn't really start hitting it off until his 40s and 50s. So you have to sometimes fail a lot before you really hit that number. And what's crazy to me, there's people more successful than either of us that still lack these understandings or attributes. So I mean, use it to your advantage, use it to your edge. To the audience, I would really, really encourage you. If you're going to get involved with customers, you're going to get involved with hiring and building a team. It's not innately human for you to hire slow and fire fast. It's usually fire slow, hire quickly. I need help now.
Yeah.
So I really, really believe that was one of the biggest learning lessons of my career.
Awesome. Alex, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of IMS.
Thanks for listening to Insight Marketing Success, where marketing knowledge meets real-world experience from vision to execution.